Hey, hello and welcome. I'm joined by Mithesh and Darren, who were on our summer analyst training program in 2021 and have since gone on to secure an internship coming up in the summer of 2022 with the energy tech trading company Dare, which we're going to talk about in a lot more detail in a moment. But guys, perhaps best off then to introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about your background for the people listening, and then we can delve into any tips and advice that you've got through applications, your experience with Dare and so on. So Mithesh, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so I guess starting right from the beginning, so going through kind of my story, I guess. I was born in India, but I moved to the UK when I was one, so I've practically grown up here my entire life. So very used to kind of British culture, kind of the education process here. I guess all the way from A levels onwards, I kind of knew that I wanted to go into the finance industry. So that's pretty much where my whole focus was. So kind of focusing on economics at A levels and then going on to study economics at university. So I'm currently at LSE studying economics as a second year student. And I guess last year I was in a position where I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do in the finance industry because it's so broad. So that's when I kind of did the Amplify program to kind of help identify exactly what I was interested in. And then following that, I realized kind of market making, trading was kind of where I wanted to go, which is why over the course of kind of the last few months, I've been applying to many different summer internships in that kind of areas, and I've managed to secure a role with Dare, which I'm super pleased about and looking forward to for the summer.
Cool. And Darren, yourself, what's
Yeah,
your story?
Well, thank you for having me here today. But yeah, let me just go from the beginning, like Mithesh did. I'm from London. I grew up in London most of my life, and for those who want to know, I'm also Vietnamese, and that's I guess that's a culture or sort of I guess country that you don't really see too much in the finance industry. And I also started off, I guess in A levels, I didn't do economics. I did maths, chemistry, biology because I actually had a sort of goal. My first goal was actually to become a dentist, but after doing experience in the area, I realized there's more to life than just sitting inside all day. And so yeah, moving on to going into university, I knew that I needed to explore, go join the student fund, student economics or finance societies. And so I go to Exeter, and it's a great place, but it's not really known for, I guess, the STEM subjects. It's not strong in maths, and it is it's probably better in English. But I've been fortunate enough to secure a role with Dare, which is highly analytical, highly mathematical, and yeah, I think really what came out of that was just building up experience sort of led me to landing a role with Dare.
Yeah, it is interesting hearing hearing between the two of you. It's like Mithesh seems fairly clear in direction from quite a young age. It was just about what role. Whereas for Darren, you've had that kind of epiphany moment of switching from one extreme to the other. So it's amazing that you're both going to be working together, right, in the summer. So yeah, great job to both of you. But let's talk a little bit about the whole kind of application process, because I know it's an absolute minefield for students because you're trying to juggle study, probably working part-time. Let's call it a degree of social life as well in there. So how did you fit in the application process, and what was it like for you personally? Mithesh, how was it for you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in terms of the application process, it's definitely a whirlwind as you described it. And I think my main tip is always to kind of start off early in the process. So some of these big firms kind of open applications all the way in September before kind of second year of university even starts. So it's a case of kind of preparing over the summer in your first year to kind of get prepared for that process. Just because if you do end up starting very late, once you've started university, I realize it is quite hectic in terms of keeping on top of work and doing all of these applications. So what I did, I kind of started preparing a bit earlier on towards the end of the summer break to kind of get that step ahead. And it was a case of applying to firms as soon as they're open, just because quite a lot of these firms recruit on a rolling basis. So it's a case of being at the front of the queue, or otherwise you do end up missing opportunities, because I know a few of my friends kind of applied a bit later on in the process. And they did extremely well in all the processes, but by the time they got to the final round, they were kind of told they're on the waiting list because they've already filled all the roles. So it's just a case of, I'd say, being early to whatever you're doing and then kind of building that experience as you keep on going, especially with the online tests, just because what I found is for a lot of these firms, they are quite similar. They do get quite repetitive. So doing that process and kind of practicing those beforehand does really help when it comes to applying to all these firms, I'd say.
Yeah. How did you go about finding the firms?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the hardest parts. I mean, obviously you have all your big names such as kind of JP, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and all of these, which everyone knows about. But then I guess it's a case of looking online for all the others. So Bright Network, they have an amazing collection of firms that you can apply to. There are a few recruiting agencies out there, such as Dartmouth Partners, that you can contact directly to see what opportunities they have. And then I guess for kind of the boutique firms, it's just a case of looking online, LinkedIn, places like that to see what you can kind of find. So it is quite varied and quite, I'd say, difficult to find a lot of these firms, but doing an online search definitely helps with that process.
And then Darren, like Dare is someone who is a really big player in their space, but perhaps not someone that's recognizable as some of the names that Mithesh just mentioned, some of the tier 1 US banks. So how did you find out about Dare?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, so I'm currently, well, I was on a 4-year course at university, but and so in my first year, the only really the only spring week I applied to was for VCMT trading, which is Dare. I just stumbled across them for happenstance, and yeah, I did their tests, and of course, it was my first experience in the testing process of applications. It was interesting, but of course, I wasn't much successful there. But my first sort of official application process was this year, and I did get chucked into the deep end, really, because I had to apply for spring weeks and placement years as part of my degree. But interesting enough, I was applying for spring weeks and placement years, but in the end, I got a summer internship. And really, with Dare, the way I sort of secured the role was through Amplify. So Amplify and Dare sort of partnered up and hosted an oil trading competition. And it was really the awareness that Amplify kind of provided of Dare. We worked very closely with Dare, and so through this I was able to kind of see what the company is like, have a go at the simulation that they run, and yeah, that's really how I got the insight of Dare. It's Amplify. It's the great connections that Amplify has with the firm, especially with Eamon, who was a old alumni of Amplify. And yeah, it's knowing more about the company now, it's certainly a fantastic company, and I couldn't be more happier to work in summer.
Yeah, Eamon Rahman, who Darren just mentioned, he's the founder and CEO of Dare. He must have started the business over 10 years ago or so, but he actually trained with Amplify right back when we started the business back in 2009, 2010. There's actually a podcast, which I'm sure you guys have listened to from him, where he goes through top 5 tips. So what I'll do is I'll share that link with this video, and you should definitely listen to the Dare CEO talk about that, because he's got a really interesting kind of story around perseverance and how he has had success so far in his career. But let me just touch on the Dare process, because I think I'm quite excited about the kind of partnership and collaboration we have, as you mentioned, Darren, with Dare. And I was talking to their head of kind of trader talent and development, Hamayan, and he was telling me about a couple of the things they do in their assessment center, which I'd be interested to see whether you've had some experience of elements of this. And one was they do a video games based assessment. And the idea here is about assessing candidates fairly, because essentially you're just, kind of having an unconscious bias and leaving no room for error. It's kind of, this is just pure performance. How does someone perform under the circumstance of just playing a somewhat a game that has nothing to do with almost the role that you're doing, because it's just judging then similar transferable skills. And then their assessment center, they have a trading pit test, which is looking at speed. I've got this kind of list here that they sent me: speed, accuracy, assertiveness, and understanding. And they score people out of 5. And then they get invited to meet then one of the senior traders for an interview. And it's only at that final stage they then look at a CV, which I find amazing, because obviously everyone knows that the first thing you do when you apply to a big institution is you put your CV online, or you apply with your CV. For them, they look at the CV at the very last point, because in their mind, it really doesn't matter at all, because it's about the testing that they've done for the best person for the job, regardless of their background, which is everything that Amplify is about as well. But yeah, tell me a little bit more about this pit session, this open outcry simulation that you had to do, because I did see Will, my colleague, running that, and I could hear a tremendous amount of noise coming out of the office. But what was that experience like for you guys?
So yeah, I mean, I guess Darren said that he kind of got into there through the trading competition. And then for me, I did the same simulation, but in a different setting. So I kind of applied to Darren the more traditional process, went through their entire testing process. And then it was in the assessment center where I kind of went through the simulation in oil trading. And what, at least for me, there was about 70 other people in the room where I was kind of competing against in the role of kind of mainly market making. And it was just a case of what they wanted to see was everyone kind of speak out on Zoom where the session was being run. And it was a case they want to see voice trading, just because the commodity space as a market is quite different to all your other markets that you see, in the sense that the commodity trading sector is all voice based. So if you want to kind of make a large block trade as like a hedge fund or an asset manager, it's a case that you have to actively speak to kind of market makers or investment banks to kind of get that trade done. So that's kind of what they were kind of testing, where they really wanted to see whether you're comfortable with speaking to a large group of people and putting yourself out there. So it was a case of listening to kind of 70 other people, making yourself heard, but listening at the same time, and then interacting through the platform to get those trades facilitated. So it was definitely a lot more pressure than what your typical kind of market making role looks like. So yeah, I mean, Darren, a bit about your experience maybe.
Yeah, I think you touched on, the nature of commodities markets really well, in that, it's mainly voice-based trading. You're talking to, sort of brokers all day. And I guess my experience in the competition was, there was a lot of loud characters, a lot of different sort of characters as well. And just to talk about like how I went about it, my strategy was, let's try get my voice heard, but let's not be loud, let's not be arrogant, let's, get the job done. And that's exactly what I did. I made sure that, I was being consistent with sort of managing my clients, being able to get the right price, and that's all the sort of things that they want to hear. Someone who gets a job done, get it done correctly and sort of accurately at the same time. It's quite hard, the skill to sort of acquire in that short period of time, because during the competition, I didn't know what to expect. They didn't tell me what was going on. However, I did do something similar in the Amplify Summer program, in that we were using the same sort of software or similar software, in that we were trading the oil spreads. And yeah, just having the experience beforehand, I was somewhat more comfortable going into this competition, where I can project my voice, get heard, and fortunately enough, in the end I did get the role. And yeah, I think it's a fantastic experience. It's unique, and good on there that they're doing something different compared to the other more traditional firms.
Yeah, cool. Well, look, we'll leave it there, and it was great to catch up with you both. Thanks for giving up the time, and of course, we still talk very regularly. So I'm super interested to find out how you guys get on, and yeah, all the best and good luck.
Yeah, thanks so much, Anthony.
Thank you, Anthony.